This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
This is, I wouldn't say my favorite set of chapters we're doing today.
High fiber, low flavor.
There are two parts of these. There's like a scene in each chapter that I really enjoy.
Well, we get a bad antagonist POV, which is always a treat.
Always a treat. And there's always these little bits at the end of the chapter where I kind of enjoy Hark, Master Hark. I enjoy his whole story. There's a little bit about Elaine, and there's a little bit about the One Power in here that I think is fun. And a little bit about the Darkfriend hunt and all that kind of stuff. So, like, that sort of thing. But it is a couple of nuggets of flavor embedded in a high-fiber diet of, as you pointed out, this just incredibly dense piece of story.
Yeah, there's not a lot of flavor or seasoning to it. This is to me the epitome of why I don't like the Succession plot. Is this kind of chapter? Like, this is when I say I don't like the Succession plot, this is the kind of thing I'm referencing. It's like these back and forths with a bunch of nobles that doesn't ultimately lead anywhere, and it feels sloggy to me. And like, I'm hoping the podcast will make it a little more interesting and at least make sense. But these chapters were just like a lot of chewing because it's good for me, not really for pleasure.
I have some interesting questions that I think we're going to come across. Okay. Like, I think there's things to discover in these chapters, particularly because we tend not to read them very closely. I caught myself skimming whole paragraphs and being like, no, read it. And then reading it and actually discovering some interesting stuff in it. So this is always what happens. I go on WoTWiki with these kinds of chapters, and I read the summary first, right? Just to remind myself what's going on and maybe catch a few of the spoilers before I even start it, right? Because that helps. And I'm like, oh, God, nothing goes on in this chapter. These are characters. And then I start reading, and I actually start to get, there's details that aren't captured in the summary that are worth talking about. So, yeah. Anyway.
We'll make it something. We'll add our seasoning to it for you, our dear listeners.
Do you want to dig into these chapters? Because,
Let's get into this. It's some heavy Andorran stuff, but we do actually make it to the end of the day, which is nice. It's been a long day.
Oh, nice. It has been a long day. Starting off with, it's one continuous scene again. And because it's pretty heavy on the fiber, we figured we'd want to get some of the, again, it's name salad, right?
Serious name salad. Mm-hmm. With a villainous POV at the end for a treat.
And this is a kale name salad. This isn't this isn't romaine, this isn't butter lettuce. This shit is going to be hard to chew. So let's dig into it.
Yeah. So we start out with this chapter, The New Follower, and that is... The subtext next words of that are of Doylan Mellar.
Right.
That is who the new follower is. It's the sixth follower for Doylan Mellar because he keeps killing the followers. It's not follower like a cult follower. It's follower like a stalker.
Could it have any meaning? Does she get any new followers at all? Like people who join her side? No, because the mercenaries are trying to leave. That's it. It's got to be him.
Yeah, it's an odd choice for title, but whatever. And the symbol is the two-faced Aes Sedai, because we have Carrie-Anne and Saritha really doing we are the same person. We have the same brain. We're sharing one brain cell between us. They're really doing that in this chapter.
Yeah, we finish each other's sandwiches. Yeah.
Yeah, and Elena's thinking about which one of them is a Darkfriend, dun dun dun, all of that stuff. So that's why we've got that symbol. The blue reception room, named for its arched ceilings, painted to display the sky and white clouds, and its blue floor tiles, was the smallest reception room in the palace, less than 10 paces square. The arched windows that made up the far wall, overlooking a courtyard and still filled with glassed casements against the spring weather, gave a fair light even with the rain falling outside. But despite two large fireplaces with carved marble lintels, a cornice of plaster lions, and a pair of tapestries bearing the white lion that flanked the doors, a delegation of Caemlyn's merchants would have been insulted to be received in the blue room, a delegation of bankers livid. Likely that was why Mistress Harfor had put the mercenaries there, although they would not know they were being insulted. She herself was present, overseeing the pair of liveried young maids who were keeping the wine cups full from tall silver pitchers standing on a tray atop a plainly carved sideboard. But she had the embossed leather folder used to carry her reports pressed to her bosom, as if in anticipation of the mercenaries being dealt with quickly. Halwyn Nori, the wisps of white hair behind his ears as always looking like feathers, was standing in a corner, also with his leather folder clutched to his narrow chest. Their reports were a daily fixture, and seldom much in them to cheer the heart of late. Quite the opposite.
Bad news all around, until it's not bad news. But it's bad news this entire chapter, pretty much.
Yeah, it's definitely, we're kind of Pandora's boxing it. It's just bad news, bad news, bad news, good news. Right at the end.
Yeah. And we're hitting, what would you call the bad part of the story, right? That lull, like, things have to look really, really desperate before she finally pulls a victory out of her ass. And I feel like we're in that Jordan trying to make things look as desperate as possible. But because it's just a bunch of meetings, it doesn't look very desperate.
Right. Because it's high-level heads of state doing war games and strategies and stuff like that. Like, it's not going to be a desperate fight in an alley. That's not what her rock bottom looks like.
So in the next paragraph, she's changed out the whoever's in charge of the guardsmen has changed from Devore to Denny. I looked into both of those characters. I couldn't see any reason why this was mentioned or brought up, or why there was a change, or if it was relevant to something, or if we saw a scene where Devore failed.
I think it's just the shift change. I think that's it. I think Devore was also wet from the outside thing and, got to get off duty and go, take a shower.
Oh, I get it. It's not that it's like she's now in charge of the guardswomen. It's just that, like, it's a shift change, and she's now in charge of the new group that came on shift.
It's another way of letting us know that time has passed, because the guards have changed.
I read that wrong.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. It's just the fact that people need to sleep and eat. All right, so then the next paragraph gives us our two dark friends potentials. One of them is a dark friend, one of them isn't. And Kareen... And it's Kareen who's the dark friend?
Kareen is the dark friend.
I did it! I fucking did it!
Yes, you got it right this time.
I did it. Before episode 500, I got
it. Before she actually gets killed.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm happy that I'm remembering that C is for dark friend.
Yeah, that's good enough for me.
I hate that absolute nonsense word vomit is an effective mnemonic, but I got so mad at you for providing it that made it stick. So and now
that's how that
works.
That's how that works.
Who am I to argue?
Listen, I have to trick my own brain all the time into remembering stuff. And the things that really piss me off are the things that, like, that doesn't make sense. Why do I remember that? But I do.
Yeah.
I still, whenever I get confused about Sidar and Sidene is Peen. It still sticks. It still works. I hate that that's what finally worked for me, but that rhyme is how I differentiate between the two of them.
Brains are dumb. They're so smart that they're stupid.
Brains are dumb. I hate my brain. Yeah.
All right, cool. And then, yes, of course, Mellar is just a raging dark friend. And
right, yeah. Just
flaming with darkness.
Oh, God, he's so bad. And there's just this, like, him and Birgitte, I feel like there's a lot of foreshadowing between the two of them. The way they, like, bump into each other at the door and the way they give each other eyes. It's like, it's just a matter of time until they kill each other.
Right, yeah, no, like, that's a confrontation that everyone knows is going to happen eventually. And, like, it goes rather lethally for both of them. Like, they literally kill each other.
Yeah.
Like, that's how bad of a confrontation it's gonna be. She has to get brought back from the freaking dead in order to, like, finish him off.
Yeah. Now, and in fairness, I do kind of feel bad for Mellar, because it's like, in what world do you kill somebody, A, and expect them to be a hero of the Horn, and B, even if they are a hero of the Horn, does the horn get blown 3 seconds later so they get to come back and kill you? It's like, the timing on that could have been bad.
You know, yeah, it's not quite like Shiriam levels of unfair where she's like, I just wanted to like get free shit at the corporate office or whatever. Like, he definitely intended to fuck with supernatural evil shit, but yeah, he didn't quite expect that level of reincarnation to be biting him in the ass specifically.
Especially with Sherry, I'm like, I don't have that much sympathy, because as much as she's like, I just wanted to steal copy paper, it's like, yeah, but you had to kill people. Like, I don't care if you just were getting a little more power. Like, you murdered people to get to where you are. That's just a definition of being in the Black Ajah. Like, right,
but you know, she still didn't expect it to be the last battle. Melar is aware of the fact that he's in the end game, but he didn't realize quite how endgamey, like how OP the end game was going to become.
Yeah, and he got a little obsessed with raping a queen.
Slightly. I mean, Elaine thinks about it here. How I was like, oh, it's so weird how he still thinks he has a chance just because I haven't squashed that rumor. And it's like, that's not why he thinks. Yeah. It's because he knows that someday he's going to get to break you in a fucking jail cell. Like, that's what he's imagining when he's looking at you. Like, you're not reading this man correctly at all.
But give the man time and he would braid a rope for his own neck. And if he failed to, she would braid one for him. Again, I think that's a reference to Brigitte's braid.
He's going to go down to a braid.
I will braid one for you. Yeah, I will braid one for you. Yeah.
A braid will be your downfall, one way or another.
Or another. I don't know how much I'm making that up, but it feels like Jordan's like, braid, Birgitte, Melar, downfall, braid. Yeah.
He just a note to himself.
Basically. Like, remember, you're going to kill him off with Birgitte, right? Okay, good.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason she's not getting rid of him and dealing with him because he's a shitty person is because she wants who sent him. Right? She wants to follow him back to the person who put him in her palace. Because she could just...
It's that, but it's also her. I mean, her statement later is, we have suspicions. We have no proof. Like, just because all the men who have followed him have died is still circumstantial. We have no evidence he's killed them.
Right, but we also know that he set up those other guys to get killed by him in the quote-unquote assassination attempt. Like, she thinks about that, too. And it's like, it doesn't matter that they were trying to kill her when he killed them. He set them up to get killed, and that counts as murder.
I missed that. Where did she figure that one out?
She thinks it's somewhere along here.
Well, bring it up if we come to it.
I don't remember exactly where it is, but it's in here, and I was like, it's just so... Because I always think, like, why do you keep him around? And she explicitly spells out, like, because I want who sent him.
Okay.
And it's like, I guess that's a good reason.
And her babies are safe. But my babies.
My babies.
She uses that here. It's like, that's one of the... honestly... I think if it wasn't every chapter that she brings it up, I would be less concerned about it. But it's always, like, justifying her behavior of, like, no, don't have to worry about them anymore. I did notice Captain Bakuvan mentioned that he knew Melar. He's Damani, but doesn't mention that he was a dark friend, which makes me think that Bakuvan may have been a dark friend, or at least, maybe not. Maybe just mercenaries not giving away information.
People don't generally tell their friends that they're dark friends, like, as a hobby, you know? Like, right, you know, you're not a dark friend, but, like, I just want to let you know this little secret. I'm actually a dark friend. Like, that's not how they work.
And she did run into him. He says, I've seen him once or twice before. It's not like he knows him really well.
Right.
So.
Right. He's like, yeah, hey, I've seen that guy at work events. Like, he's followed my trade before. Like, we're actually similar, professionally speaking.
But, like, I've done that where I'm like, yeah, I've worked with that guy once or twice. I do not vouch for him. Specifically, like, I don't know anything about them. They were fine to work with that once, but, like, that is such a limited interaction. I don't know anything about their personal life. I don't know anything about their emotional state. I don't know anything about their history, you know, that sort of thing.
Right. And this guy's, you know, trying to maybe ingratiate himself with Elaine by, like, you know, putting doubts and, you know, or like bringing information she might not know. But unfortunately, she already knew. So, you know, he doesn't get any points for bringing it up. And he actually, I think we've seen him before and we see him again. Of all the mercenary captains, Bakuvan is the one that actually, like, does stuff repeatedly in the plot. And I believe that he dies reportedly, like, defending a guardhouse or something. like at some point during the fall of Camelin, there's an instance where it's like, oh, did he, or not during the fall of Camelin, like during the last siege or something. It's like, wait, did he turn coat or not? And they're like, no, he died in the fighting on the right side. He's just dead anyway. So, but none of the rest of them do anything interesting. But Bakovan is such a cool name that Robert Jordan decided to make him the face of the mercenary group.
Hold. Okay, so that's not what I'm getting from the wikis.
Oh, really? Am I confusing him with someone or just making shit up wholesale?
He stays loyal until Dylan arrives with reinforcements, and then he asks for more money, but Elaine refuses to grant the request.
Yeah, and then?
That's it. That's the last time he appears.
Oh. So I'm confusing. There's a mercenary captain that, like, gets talked about there. I thought I could have swore it was Bakovan. Oh, well.
Let's see. There's Cordwin. He's killed in battle, but he fights against Bakovan. So Cordwin and Bakovan end up fighting against each other. Cordwin dies, and Gossaman turns traitor, and Elaine signs his death warrant. So
how does so Bakovan does show up fighting Cordwin at some point then?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so he stays loyal. He's the only one who stays loyal.
That's what I was saying.
Okay.
So there is more about him. He's in a battle and kills a guy.
Yep. Okay.
I'm fairly certain that that's during the very last siege before Elaine becomes queen.
So he's definitely one that stays loyal. So
I don't think he's a Darkfriend. I think he's just a mercenary who's good at his job.
Gossamon brings up that the White Tower is split, which is just, I think, just sort of emphasizing how much the split is like daily news on the street now. Everyone's just talking about it.
Yeah, it's a good line. Like, hey, so word on the street is there's factionation happening to the point that, like, you're gonna need to clarify who you want us to be in awe of. Like, I love that line. Like, who is it exactly you want us to be in awe of? Like, you guys don't seem to know who you are. Mm-hmm. So get back to me once you've sorted that out.
To which they respond, like, how many Aes Sedai does Aramilla have? None, right? Like, clearly, it doesn't matter which side supports Elaine because Aes Sedai support Elaine, and no Aes Sedai support Aramilla.
Right. Yeah. Which I was wondering, is that true that she has no Aes Sedai, or does she have some sneaky Aes Sedai? Because I kind of
as far as I can tell, no Aes Sedai on her side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think this, and nobody's dumb enough none of the Aes Sedai are dumb enough to hang out with Aramilla. They're like, yeah, no, not gonna happen. When we get to Aramilla's part, it's very Game of Thrones. The senile leader, the hungry power, throwing people away to win points. Like, feels like a scene from Game of Thrones got cut and pasted into Wheel of Time from her POV.
I wonder if Robert Jordan wanted to take a spin at writing in that kind of headspace and didn't want to, like, have any of his, because none of his characters are like that, but he was like, well, I haven't given Aramilla a POV yet. I could write that in, like, a more, like, Game of Thronesy style and just take it for a spin for a couple pages. Ew, I don't like this. Never doing it again.
I know I'm going to wipe them out anyway, so might as well.
Yeah.
I really like this line, so Saritha, because I do think it is, we've heard Jordan say this is sort of the central truth, or the central theme of the books. Truth has more shadings than you might think, and distance often distorts truth into something very different from facts.
Yeah.
Truth versus facts, right? Like, what is the truth to people? It's what they hear. Like, Gawain has the truth that Rand killed his mother. Mm-hmm. But that's not a fact.
No, the facts are in direct defiance of that truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And, myths become legends, right? Like, there's just so much going on in that quote that I really like.
Yeah. It's one of his more eloquent iterations of his thesis.
So, the mercenaries are complaining. There's nobody to sign up. You've snatched up all the eligible men. You're not paying us enough. We didn't think it would go on this long, yada, yada. And she's like, listen, you agreed to a certain amount per day. You're going to get your gold. If we win, you'll get more gold. And if some of your people die, you'll get, that means less people to distribute the gold. So, stop whining.
Right, and then one of them tries to be like, oh, but we have to pay benefits to the widows, and the other two, like, basically die choking, because they're like, that's not a thing we do. You really think
totally
she's going to fall for that?
Right,
like,
right.
No, get out of here.
No.
And Elaine's like, no, I think you should probably fuck off. And then one of them pinches the maid for, like, the third time or whatever, and she's like, and if you don't stop mistreating my servants, I will put you out of the city without your weapons or your horses or shoes.
Yeah.
Are we clear?
I like that.
No, It's good. I like how she's holding her temper, and then, like, one of her women gets abused, and she just goes all mama bear, and is like, without weapons, horses, or boots. Like, yeah, don't harass the staff. Certainly not in front of their employer. Like, you want the manager to speak to you? You don't want the manager to speak to you.
So then that meeting breaks up. The mercenaries leave. She sends away the Aes Sedai, who I think Kareen immediately turns around and attempts to spy. Right?
Oh, definitely. I'm assuming the eavesdropper is the Black Sister every time that she's
every
referencing.
time.
Yeah, has to.
Yep. And then we got Renee here, who's not gonna. Renee Harfour dies, right?
No, Rhiannon Corley.
Rhiannon Corley, right? Jesus Christ.
We were complaining about this in the last episode that we recorded.
Yeah,
those
it's too close.
Being in this. Well, see, that was Robert Jordan realized that he had those two characters and was like, okay, I got to kill one. Too close. One of these has to go, and it's not going to be Rhiannon Harfour.
So Elaine seizes the power, which doesn't always happen, and that's why she ends up holding on to it for a while, because it's like it steadies her a little bit.
Yeah, she manages to achieve the source, and she doesn't want to, like, lose the serenity it gives her, so she just holds it for, like, the rest of the afternoon and into the evening.
Which is not good for her. I was curious what you thought about that in terms of, like, how it's going to affect the babes. Because, like, don't we have the whole... All right. There's some weirdness around Rand's children, right, in the prophecies?
Min says that some of Avienda's children will be strange, and in the forward visions, they have a very different relationship to the power. They hold the power constantly. But that's Avienda's kids. Min doesn't have any similar comments about Elaine's kids. I was having a similar thought, like, does this affect their development somehow? But, like, the Aes Sedai really put up a lot of buffers on buffers on buffers around how they think the power is supposed to work, and I don't necessarily believe that their ideas around, like, not holding the power all the time are logical. It seems like it would just give you better longevity and higher health experience, and, like, just make your immune system stronger and shit. I feel like you should hold the power all the time. That would make more sense to me.
It kind of feels like microdosing, right?
Yeah.
You know, like a little bit, maybe a little bit all the time might calm you out and calm down your immune system and just chill you out a little bit. Maybe holding all the power all the time and being so fucking high that you're not functional and never feel your emotions 100% of the time could be problematic.
That's probably a really good way of comparing it. Yeah. Given how he constructed it to be like a drug. Yeah. It's probably true. It's like, don't be literally like a wall melting tripping all the time. Maybe microdosing might be the best way to manage your stuff. But Elaine's having a hard time reaching the power because of the whole pregnancy making it difficult to achieve that state thing. So she's really savoring it now that she's got that. And she's able to make eavesdropping weave, or protection from eavesdropping weave, and then she says, all right, let's start this meeting. But before we start this meeting, I just want to kind of unload about how I want some bloody good news for a change. And she just kind of like starts out, and it just unloads. You just feel the dam unlocking, and she just like goes for a couple paragraphs. And it's like, I just want some good news. And then Nori and Mr. Tarfor look at each other like, so do you want to throw yourself on that grenade, or should I?
Do you want to disappoint the pregnant lady?
It's not
at least
a
her
good
emotions
moment.
at least her emotions are under control with the power a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, I guess she has that meltdown first, and then gets the power and calms down. And
right.
But yeah, then we get to have our little meeting, and first we get news from John Skellett, who is our double turncoat spy in Aramilla's camp, and we kind of get this sense of how things are going in Aramilla's camp, how confident they are. That's not encouraging, but it is a good ticking clock in the background, sort of tension ratcheter.
Well, they're like overconfident, right? You know, I mean, it's just Aramilla's, I'm going to be the first one to ride in the city. And it's just like, okay, whatever, Aramilla. Like, you're ridiculous. You're absolutely ridiculous as a person. And I don't understand why anybody follows you.
Delusions of grandeur is very much her brand.
So she worries about Skellett, turning coat a third time and basically saying, hey, I turned coat. But they, the assumption is if he lets Aramilla know that he betrayed her, she's just gonna gut him. She won't care what kind of information she can get out of him.
Yeah, no, they're kind of just like he's about to be too nervous to be not compromised. He's probably gonna run, just like completely run all the way away from all of this. That's probably gonna happen soon.
And then we run into Samuel Hark, which I gotta say, I definitely have gotten John Skellett and Samuel Hark mixed up, because in a lot of ways they have the same story. They're like criminals who got unwillingly pressed into service for Elaine to spy on her enemies, and they're both in the same chapter here. And so I in my brain, I actually think I thought they were the same person. Thinking back, I'm like, oh yeah, that's that person who does the spying for her.
Yeah, I definitely made that mistake too.
Yep. But they're two different people. One is a cut purse. The other one is just a traitor.
He's a hairdresser, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Is his cover story. But he's just a spy. He's just he's an eyes and ears that gets brought into the war effort, basically. But then this guy is, an actual bona fide cut purse with a cut purse collection. But yeah, the part where one gets let out and the next one gets let in, and they serve such similar functions. They're both kind of on the underbelly of society a little bit. Like, it's very easy to just assume they're the same person, but no, they are not. But this guy has been a successful cut purse for 20 years, has like rare collector's purses that he cut, basically, like 20 years ago, like that were limited edition sort of products. And so that's how they know how long he's been doing it. And he like has a bunch of money, but he doesn't trust bankers. Like he's just this weird, kooky conspiracy dude that just like exists on the fringes. He's fun. I like him.
I feel like he's got a little bit of paranoia that like led him to do this, like steal money and more money than he needs, and he's way more skilled than he needs to be to do. Like he's like the best cut purse ever. And, like, he could have moved on to better crime, but because that's just his obsession, that's what he does, right? Like, he cuts purses, not for the money, not for the stealing it, but
for the love of the game.
Having the purse. For the love of the game, yeah. For the love of the purse.
Yeah, and the only reason he got caught was because someone else took a plea bargain and ratted him out.
Yeah. Which, never tell other people how you make your money. I guess someone must have been in his apartment and seen his collection.
Presumably. Well, it was another criminal, right, who like took a plea bargain, like just it's a snitches get stitches and all that good stuff.
I have to wonder if this was originally written, or if Jordan ever had the idea of making the purses the trophies he took from women he killed.
Ooh, that's dark.
And like reframe it in that way, and it's not just he's cutting purses, he's cutting throats and keeping the purses of those women as his trophies, and like then just the numbers of purses. It becomes a much darker character if you read it like that.
That's like some Jack the Ripper shit. Well, that's not good. I don't like that. This should have been a serial killer in the city for 20 years. It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
I mean, people disappear all the time. You can't keep track of them. This is pre-technology, right? Like, the world population is shrinking. There's so many dark friends, and they have to kill multiple people, right? So we know there are people dying left and right and disappearing left and right, and like, not to mention Trollocs are eating people. Fades need people for their blades, right? The number of people that are disappearing, like Jordan makes this really clear in the early books. In the later books, it's not as quite obvious, just because we're not traveling through the countryside. We're in the big cities, but out in the countryside, the people are dying and they are disappearing, and civilization is losing against the wilderness. And a big part of that is because, there's dark friends everywhere. There are murderers everywhere.
I don't like that.
It's not good. It's not a fun place to live, right? Like,
no.
The Third Age, like, recovering from the Cataclysm, there was a certain amount of recovering, but, like, every 1,000 years, right, Ishamael comes back and goes, I'm just going to fuck that up a little bit.
Yeah.
And so civilization just hasn't really come back from the Cataclysm the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oof. Something else I noticed about Samuel Hark is that he's basically a real life gray man.
Sure. Yeah. Very Blaine
She describes
looking.
him as just average to the point of being remarkably unremarkable. Like he's just, but he still has a soul. He's still a normal human being. He's just, really good at this nondescript thing.
Samuel Hark is what the gray men want to be.
Right, he's the actual original ideal of what a gray man could be. It's like, what if we made that as like a magical upgrade instead of just a thing you cultivate as a person?
The problem with the gray men is that the magic that makes them unnoticeable is actually noticeable, right? Like, what's that weird feeling? Wait, why didn't I notice that person when I saw them the first time, right? That's how our Taviran always, especially the ones that channeling, they're like, oh yeah, no, that's weird that he hid from my perception the first time. Oh, gray man, right?
Right. Whereas this guy genuinely could slip by because he's working entirely on a social engineering level, no magic involved.
Exactly.
I mean, and he looks average. He does have, the genetic good luck to not, have a really striking face. But still, I'm sure it's 90% body language because that's how this works.
Can I just say, I love that they took the phrase ratted him out and it became turned the cat on him.
I did like that.
Yeah, basically because he's now the rat, you turn the cat on. There's that betrayal of turning the cat. The cat is the police. You rat them out. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering if that was just RJ like doing his own little in-world spin on things, or if that's actually a way the phrase gets turned.
Ooh, I don't know. Let's see if we can.
Because it could just be like him, doing a peaches or poison kind of thing.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Yeah. When I Google turn the cat on him, I get a lot of things that are not what I'm looking for.
All right. Yeah. We're gonna go with that was an RJism. Very fun.
Yeah. A lot of furry stuff. Like, oh, turned into a cat? No, that's not what I was looking for.
Well, everyone else's Google results, thank you. Google search history thanks you for taking a hit for the team.
Don't search that. Oh, God. The things I do for you people.
That's what incognito mode is for.
No, that's not what incognito mode is for.
It can be.
Fair enough. Yeah, thousands of purses. Yeah, this phrase, there are thousands of them, my lady. Quite literally thousands. I suppose he may regret keeping trophies. And yeah, just feels very serial murder.
Yeah.
But I agree, thousands, like, you can't hide thousands of bodies.
That's a lot of bodies for one person in one city.
Right.
Because we're not talking about someone who, like, is an international serial killer. We're talking about, like, he's been in Camelin this whole time. Mm-hmm.
Hundreds is a crazy number of bodies that we've seen people. That's like 30 deaths is like a major serial killer, like the biggest we've ever seen. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
you're getting into thousands, like that is some state sponsored serial killering.
Right. That's ridiculous. So it has to be just people who have like, oh, where'd my purse go?
Yeah, I think he genuinely just loves the art of cutting purses. He's got this whole like sob story about like this place he worked and how they hated him, like persecution complex. Like I do think you're right. He's maybe got just a bit of paranoia, just like genuinely threading through like his whole neurology. It's not just an excuse here, an excuse there. It's like who he is.
I'm gathering evidence that his own daughter is stealing from him. No, you were stealing from him and you were trying to frame her.
Right. You were stealing from them to justify some slight that she did to you one time. And it's like, yeah, this guy's got a persecution complex.
Definitely. There's some things going on in his head that are not healthy at all. But I like his story. I like his little justifications. And I like that once he realizes he's caught, he's like, and then he sees a way out. He's like, oh yeah, I'll take that way out. Thank you. Mm-hmm. His little I can see where it might look bad. I'm not admitting anything, but I can understand why you might think that. So I'm gonna go ahead. Okay, yeah, if you say so, I'll take that option because I don't want to trouble you anymore. But I'm still innocent. You know?
I maintain my innocence, like, but I accept your story. It's like, okay.
It's like when corporations pay out but admit no fault.
We'll give you all the money that the court says you deserve, but we won't admit fault while we do it.
Right. But then why are you, if you didn't do anything wrong, why are you paying it out? Just, we don't want to look bad.
Yeah, we're just that generous and care so much about our image. We just want to, get out of front of that before anyone thinks anything bad. It's just a perception thing.
Hark Industries. We'll follow you anywhere.
And he tries to claim that he was a clerk, and Elaine's like, we should test that. And Nori takes a piece of paper out of his folder. The trumpets are sounding, the angels are singing, the clouds have parted. It's
he's like,
funny.
here, this is what his handwriting looks like, and it's chicken scratch.
Yeah, it is elementary school learning how to write level of stuff. And it's like, yeah, that's not even entry level clerk handwriting. Not at all. Not at all. You don't even know enough about how clerks write to, like, try. Like, you're barely literate at all, which is fine, but, like, don't claim you're a clerk. That's silly.
So she threatens him, basically says, you're going to hang or you're going to follow
Mellar.
And then she uses a finding on him, which I think is one of the more interesting chunks, right? Because this is a spell that Moraine used on the silver coins she gave to the boys in book 1. And we finally get what I feel like is a magical breakdown of some of the properties of that spell.
Finally.
And like, yeah, it's like, geez, come on, Jordan. I know it's 10 books later, but like, give us just a little hint. Yeah, no, this is fun. This is the fading that Moraine used on the silver coins she gave to the boys. The weave she laid on Hark's belt buckle, his boots, his coat, and breeches was something akin to that for the warder bond, though much less complex. Right, so that brings, I remember us talking about how it was much like the warder bond, and this is our evidence, right? It would fade from the clothing and boots in a few weeks and months at best, but metal would hold a finder forever. That's why she gave him the coins instead of putting it on them. I've laid a weave on you, Master Hark. That's a bit of a lie, because it's on her clothing, not on him, but yeah, okay.
The clothes are on him. Close enough.
Now you can be found wherever you are. And truth, only she would be able to find him. So only the person who uses the finder can use it. The person who places it has to use it. The finder was attuned to the one who wove it. There was no reason to tell him that. So it's just a little bit of information about how, yeah, this is like a warder bond. That is how they find them. It works better on metal. That's why it's not on the person. And only the person who wove it can use it, which is why Moraine was the only one who could find the boys.
I like how Elaine is the POV that's giving us these like engineering schematic kind of details into how the power works in this one context. That's appropriate.
She knows that's one of my favorite things about Elaine that I wish he spent more time on. Is I'd love to see more time in the way that we see Nynaeve healing.
Yeah.
In her head,
yeah.
We see her sort of poking around with the weaves a little bit, and how she ends up curing Stilling.
Yeah.
I would love to see Elaine doing something similar as she's tinkering around with but if I connect these here and then apply the matrix multiplication here and, hey, it works. Yeah,
Yeah, that would have been
I compiled it and it worked the first time. What the hell? Like, that's really cool, right? That level of, like, programming of Terran I think would be really cool. And that would have been just more interesting than some of this politics stuff that we're talking about now.
Yeah, trying to avoid talking about. Yeah, so then we get to Elaine saying, I want whoever put Mellar in my palace, I want to find that person. And here's the thing I referenced earlier. He had arranged for men to die, or he had killed them, in order to gain his place. That those men had thought they were to kill her made no difference. Murder was murder.
Oh, okay. Yep. I see that now.
Yeah, so that's just this whole thing where she's keeping her enemies closer in an effort to follow the trail back to the actual brains, because Mellar is clearly not the brains. He's the sword.
Yeah. Clearly only has one thing he wants, and he can't plot a way around that.
No, he is a one-trick pony in that regard.
Yeah, and then this is blood and bloody ashes. We know the man's as rotten as last month's fish. No, we have suspicions, not proof. Those 5 men might have fallen afoul of footpads. Right? And she's like trying to follow the law and like, doing the whole, the queen is not above the law, which is kind of ridiculous because aren't queens, like presidents aren't above the law, but queens and kings are. That's what makes them queens and kings.
I mean, if you want to make an argument for monarchy, you have to suggest that they are in fact beneath the law, I think.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm an anti-monarchist in general, so.
Right. But this is a monarchy, right?
Yeah.
Very clearly,
Yeah.
right? Like I don't agree with the monarchy, but this is a monarchy. This isn't a constitutional monarchy or like she's literally trying to take over the city with armies.
Yeah.
She's trying to be a dictator, right? Like, why does she have to follow these, like, laws?
I think because RJ wanted the implication that there is a constitution etched in the soul of every noble person who got a good education, which is nonsense, but I feel like that's part of his, like, ideal worldview. It's just like, well, of course we have to, like, lead the way we expect to be followed. Obviously, that's the moral thing to do.
And it's not like, he doesn't expect that. There's obviously bad leaders and bad nobles all throughout
but
these
this is
cities.
Camelot, so we
right.
have to be King Arthur levels of perfect over here. But yeah, it is an interesting contrast. Though I do think, to revert to the medieval aspect of this, they're like, once we have proof that he sucks badly enough, then we can torture him for information. Which, like,
right. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
I was with you on the evidence-based prosecution, but I'm not okay with the and then we torture him, because, like, empirically, torture doesn't work.
Do you think Cameron's Bill of Rights applies in this situation, or do you think they even have something like that?
Well, again, this is where I think RJ is like, no, in their heart of hearts, they just know those values. But yeah, no, there's no constitution. There's no Bill of Rights. There's no anything like that. It's just, do you have a good leader who cares about you or not? Because that's how monarchies roll. And because it's Camelot, everything's fine. But, like, it's it's really just what Elaine says it is. That's what the Bill of Rights is for Cameloters.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And, like, there's we have to follow the law or else I'll lose support. Like, that's just a PR game. That's not legalities.
Right. We have to be seen following the law. It doesn't mean you have to follow the law.
Right. That's, like, you need the high seats to believe that you won't break the law at them in order for them to join you in gaining power. And, like, but that's all just 4D chess with hearts and minds.
And that takes us to the end of the chapter, as far as I have.
Yeah. The chapter transition happens when a servant comes in and says, yo, Dylan's here. And then the chapter transitions to a bronze bear, which is for the Borderlanders on the map that we go to look at while we wait for Dylan to join the party and talk about things and do a whole bunch of political walk and talk kind of stuff. But, like, again, there's not much in this chapter transition, so
I would say there's even less in this chapter than in the previous one.
Yeah, so let's hop on over to a bronze bear.
And because the symbol is the snake in the wheel, which either means it's going to be one of the most impactful chapters in the book series, or nothing's going to happen.
There are two options.
It's all politics. There are two options when this is snake in the wheel.
Yeah.
I need a quick break, though, before we dig into this chapter.
All right. A bronze bear, which is definitely the Borderlanders. Leaving Mistress Harfor and Master Nori, Elaine started eagerly toward the map room, still holding Sidar. Eagerly but not hurriedly. Denny and 3 guardswomen strode ahead of her, heads swiveling in constant search of threats, and the other 4 stamped along behind. She doubted that Dylan would take long over her ablutions, good news or bad. The light said that it was good. Birgitte, hands clasped behind her back and wearing a frown, seemed sunk in silence as they walked, though she studied every crossing corridor as if expecting an attack from it. The bond still carried worry. And tiredness. A yawn cracked Elaine's jaws before she could stop herself. That's one of the through lines of these 2 chapters, is weariness is translating through the bond. Which, like, if the Aes Sedai is getting tired from the warder being tired, the warder is severely overtaxing themselves. Like, the warders are supposed to be, like, a source of strength. So if they're actually weakening, like, you need such a big nap.
But Elaine's bond is different, right? Because it's with a woman. So there's feedback between the 2 of them that there's not with a normal warder bond.
I don't like
they
those
mirror
rules.
each other. What?
I don't like those rules.
No, I mean, I feel like it's a thinly veiled attempt to talk about period syncing up, which I don't want to talk about. Because I have no...
I think you're right. I think that is... He talks about period syncing directly, but I think that you're right that he is just extrapolating that to this and saying, something girls are different. And it just is, like, weirdly unnecessary.
And the bond makes it not just a physical sync up, but an emotional one as well.
because women are more emotional. It just, yeah, it feels like a whole stew of stereotypes slurried together, and I don't like it. I want the bond to just be the same across everything, except for when you double bond between channelers. I'm okay with that being different, because that is clearly different.
Right.
At a fundamental mechanical level. But like the whole which gender is bonding which, and it's different. Like, no, you don't need that. Stop it.
Smack him a little bit.
Yeah, it's too deep of a gendering. You don't need it to be that deeply gendered. Like, that's unnecessary. Like, I need a squirt bottle, Stop.
So I think the next couple of paragraphs basically talk about how full the palace is. You've got all the kinswomen, you've got all the sea folk, you have all their armsmen, all the people who are coming in through the gateways, and they're all, as they always do, the sea folk and kinswomen have to sleep 2 or 3 to a bed.
Even the nobility are sleeping 2 and 3 to a bed. Like, this place is bursting at the seams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. These pages are bursting with characters, none of which have really any flavor at all. Again, pure fiber, no seasoning.
I do wonder at that phrasing, though, that whenever a place gets full, he talks about how many people are sleeping in a bed. And I'm like, do these places not have extra beds? Can you not build beds, pull them out of the closet? Have they not heard of a trundle bed or like a pallet on the floor? Like, I'm like...
No, he does say that some of the kin have been reduced to pallets on the floor. Like in the servants' quarters.
But I'd rather a pallet on the floor than sharing a bed with somebody.
Absolutely. Like, I will share
Right?
the bed with, like, maybe 3 people in the entire world, and everyone else is like, yeah, no, let's figure out multiple surfaces. Like, no. The concept of, like, oh, well, you're just of similar rank, so I guess you're all not just bunk mates, but, like, bed mates is like, whoa. No.
I mean, I've heard of the concept of hot bunking in other books.
Sure.
Where basically you work shifts, so somebody sleeps 8 hours. You can have up to 3 people, right? Where you each get 8 hours in the bed.
Yeah, heard of that. That's different. But yeah, the idea of sharing the mattress with people just because of proximity in housing is just like, like, how about I stay up at night and I'll take the bed during the day? Like, I don't need to end up spooning with my random, like, not even colleagues. Like, that's just not necessary. Very weird. I thought that there is one interesting thing here where she talks about how farmers or laborers might think all nobles are wealthy, and certainly most were, if only in comparison, but the expenses required by their positions and duties left many counting coins as carefully as any farm wife. And I highlighted that because I definitely know that I've seen that as a mechanic in a couple of, like, period dramas. Like, where the king coming to stay at your place is both an honor and a potential bankrupting event.
I feel like Game of Thrones, that was the whole opening scene in the first, like, book, is the king comes to visit the Starks, and it's this incredible imposition because they can barely afford it, right? Like,
yeah, that I learned about it first in Philippa Gregory books. But yes, very much so. That is, I recognized it from those books about the Tudors, like Tudor England.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in Game of Thrones, it's like, oh yeah, that I remember that when Henry the Seventh is like touring around, and later on Elizabeth's doing the same thing, like, or however it went. I don't know. It's been a long time since I read those books.
Yeah, as Pants is saying, like the Olympics, right? It turns out the cities who put on the Olympics often take on significant debt and burden to do that. It is not a benefit. It's not. Like, they advertise the Olympics is going to bring in all this business, but really what you're left with is a bunch of crumbling infrastructure that you can't use for anything else.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, don't get me started on the Olympics. But yeah, it's, I'm curious though, how much that's true, like the way that RJ is saying it here, where it's like, oh no, that's just kind of all rich people. All rich people are actually like on this knife's edge of like maintaining their estates and their incomes and their outflows, like in this medieval context, and how much of that is like just a thing that happens when your, central king character is traveling the countryside, and how much of that is not really how like the average nobility has existed throughout the periods that he's drawing from for this example.
I mean, they haven't had the compound interest the way we do with our banks, and they have to get their passive income somewhere else. I think it comes from spending money to keep the peasants in line and keep the money coming in, and I feel like it was harder back then.
Because they're basically doing agricultural management. They're basically farmers, but of people who are actual farmers. But like it's that you have to like front the investment or whatever on that, and if the crop fails, like you'll be as screwed as the farmers under you, each in your own respective way.
And you need a lot of manpower to manage the farmers, right? Because like there's a lot of farmers and they only make a little bit each, so you have to take, it just takes a lot of manpower to go out and collect your dues.
Agriculture's a lot of work, and yeah, collecting and managing that is, you need a lot of people working on that. Which is why, so many of the origins of civilization seem to be focused around accounting for harvests and who did what and gets what. Seems to be the motivating factor behind developing writing, potentially.
I love the idea that we settled down to grow wheat because we realized wheat could make beer, and like beer is the reason we have agriculture.
I am very good with this headcanon.
And civilization. Yeah. I'm like, wait. People were good being wanderers, hunters, and gatherers for, nearly 100,000 years, right? And then about 6,000 years ago, someone said, hey, this grass makes beer. All right, let's make some civilization.
Plot twist.
And now I have to go to work. And I don't like it.
Ninkasi, why'd you gotta do this to us?
So the next thing we get into is a conversation around how the palace is being rearranged, which we foreshadowed in the last episode. So yeah, the palace is changing, right? The Dark One is influencing it. It feels like it was a one-time thing, but they're worried about it happening again.
Right. And this is before, when it got brought up, it was like, oh, my brain's going. And Elaine was all upset about that. And now Brigitte's coming back and being like, hey, so I did some checking and you're not crazy. None of us are crazy. This is actually something that's happened, and it's not happening slowly and fluidly. We can't see it happening, but it could happen again. There's nothing we can do. But Brigitte's the one who actually does the legwork to figure out, to like step beyond herself and say, no, I know what I know. This is wrong, and gets out some string or whatever and like maps out some corridors, and it's like, no, this is genuinely different than the original blueprint, like truly.
And she gets into how my memory is great, and then you get in the whole, she's forgetting her memory, which I think is her leaking back into Teleron Riyadh. I don't think Mogedion could keep her out of it permanently. I think she's basically, as she loses her memories are going back into a figure in Teleron Riyadh, right? And then her death completes it, right?
Yeah, like there's some version of her in like a bed in Teleron Riyadh that's very wispy and is slowly growing stronger and stronger and is just asleep. And eventually that person wakes up, and that's what happens, when her head gets cut off by Mellar. In the real world, her dream self wakes up fully restored to where it was.
And I think that if she hadn't survived, she wouldn't have been able, it would have been too quick, and she wouldn't have been able to be restored in Teleron Riyadh. I think Elaine keeping her in the real world is the reason why she's able to come back.
She would have experienced like a Wolf Dream style final death sort of thing.
Exactly.
Hadn't been able to anchor her long enough that, the download speed back up to the cloud, the upload speed is like acceptable.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, I totally agree, because it seems like she's losing the memories that make her supernatural and bringing her down to just being a normal person. Eventually she's going to plateau as someone who only remembers this life, and that's it. Yeah, she basically hits that point right as she's dying. And I think that's just like reality has to balance out, and it's like, no, all those extra memories, we gotta put those somewhere. That's not good. We'll put them back in your spot, in your slot, in your filing cabinet and tell everyone Riyadh to pick up when you stop with this ridiculous being alive at the wrong time thing.
Right, yeah, what is this? You don't work. This is a paradox. We need to just get back and just see it, like the pattern trying to stuff her back in the hole, and like she's too big to fit in the container, like a stuffed sack for your sleeping bag.
Yeah, totally. Get in there. Get back in the box.
And every stuff, it just gets a couple more memories back in the stuffed sack, right? Until it's finally just, And then the death is finally like just pulling the cord tight.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, and then she references Neris's reluctance to leave her apartments made sense. And perhaps Renee's earlier puzzlement. I wanted to go back and check, are those things actually in the text? Because I didn't see them at the time.
Yeah, there was. I almost pointed it out when we were doing it, but it was in the scene where Avienda gets taken away. Neris is sent to get a meal, and she hesitates before leaving. And then she gets back as the Aiel are leaving. She finally makes her way back with the tray. She re-enters as the Aiel exit. And I didn't quite point it out when we were there, but I did note it mentally when we passed through it. Like, I know that hesitation gets mentioned later, but then we just blazed by it for whatever reason.
Blazed by it.
For whatever reason.
For whatever reason. Sorry about that. We do try and stop for those details, but sometimes it's hard to catch them all.
Yeah, I highlight everything in one color, and sometimes things slip by, despite the fact that I quote unquote highlighted it.
And what about Renee's earlier puzzlement?
I don't remember that. I think that might have been in this chapter. I don't remember about her puzzlement. I'm not. Yeah, that one I don't know.
I mean, so she runs into Renee on the way in when she's in wet things, right? When she's soaking wet. And so there's just like, they appear not to want to meet her eye. So I think there's just like, remember, because they got lost wandering in the on their way in when they were wet, and Renee was with them. So I think that's what she's referring to when she says Renee's earlier puzzlement.
Maybe because Renee's Mr. Tarfor is the only person who doesn't have some kind of interpersonal beef with Elaine, like Avienda and Birgitte and even her guard do. Like, she's just the head maid.
Yeah, I can't find anything. Renee and Rianne offered courtesies, neither quite meeting Elaine's eye, and both pled duties before hurrying off.
That doesn't seem like it, but it would have been something very offhanded, and yeah, I didn't notice it.
That's right after she screamed, right? She threw back her head and screamed, and then they like look nervous and fly away. So maybe they're being nervous because you threw back your head and screamed at them.
Possibly.
All right, so that's moving forward on that.
So then the next thing I've got is Elaine sort of internally marveling. She does this twice in this chapter, that one of her older mentor people would look to her for answers, and kind of coming to terms with the fact that, like, some people see her as the adultiest adult in the room, and that how terrifying that is, right? Brigitte's looking at her like, well, what do we do about this room thing? Or not what do we do about it, but just like, I need to present you with this information. And Elaine's like, it's so strange how she seems calmer now that she's given her answers. Like, there's no way that she thinks I have any answers. Like, but she does seem weirdly calmer for having, given her questions and like gotten it out. And she has the same thing with Dylan later. Dylan's like, well, you were able to tell me that you know about it, and that does make me feel better because you're an Aes Sedai. And Elaine's like, I'm not, what the? And it's like, I mean, as someone in their early 30s who's I am an adult, and it's like, oh God, what?
Well, and I do that at work sometimes, where like I know that the problem is hard, and I know that I don't know how to solve it, and I pass it on to somebody else, and I'm like, I know you don't know how to solve it either, but it's that's your responsibility, and now I don't have to worry about it anymore. Like, I've just gotten that off my plate. Like, I'll think about it and I'll help you, but honestly, this is your problem now, right?
But yeah, I mean, you want the Aes Sedai to say we are aware of the problem, even if that's literally all that they can say. That feels more reassuring than anything else. And Elaine is unused to having that deference given to her, a woman who's barely 20.
Right, but she's Aes Sedai and now soon to be queen, right? Like, she is full Aes Sedai, and they're treating her like one.
That's what you asked for. You literally asked for this. Like, congratulations, it's working.
What do you think happens if you're in a room that disappears?
I mean, that sounds like some vacuole stuff. You probably just cease to exist. Or you wake up in the room and you look out the window and it's like being inside a tornado until you starve to death. And like, I don't know, it's messed up. It's real messed up. I don't like it. But she has this cool interchange with Denny and asks her like, hey, does this bother you? And Denny gives the best, most orderly advice.
Yeah.
Any day you wake up, maybe you die. Like, this is just a thing that might happen. Like, I'm not going to lose sleep over it because shit happens. You know, this is just a way of saying shit happens.
Because, like, one day there will be a day that you wake up and that's the day you die, right? Like, there's that day that will happen at some point in everybody's future, right? So why freak out every day?
Right.
If it might.
Yeah, with stuff you can't control, it's like, so lightning is striking twice as often as it used to. Like, what am I going to do about it? Like, continue to avoid being a lightning rod. That's it. Like, I can't, whatever. We're going to worry about things that are in the here and now, not potentials. And it's just a good way of phrasing it. Very Aiel also. It's a very Aiel way of looking at it. Like, well, we're all have to wake from the dream. I mean, just happens.
Right. Terrifying.
And yeah, I also wonder what Pants is asking in chat is, do these rooms actually disappear or are we having swappages? Because in the White Tower, the rooms swap, nothing disappears. But we do know later in this palace that Nynaeve wakes up in a room with no doors at one point and she has to gateway out and is like, that would be a problem for someone who doesn't have gateway powers. Like they would die because how would you find them?
Right. I think it's just getting worse, right? Like, but yeah, you don't know. I mean, no one's Birgitte didn't do, sit down and make a complete map of the palace and do a comparison of blueprints, right? Like nobody did that work.
Yeah. It's, I imagine inconsistent results would make a lot of sense. She does talk about looking at the map of the city and seeing if any of the streets have changed, but like that's a huge undertaking. So yeah, I could see surveying the palace being out of scope.
Yeah, so they're in the map room, right? So they go to this room where it's basically a mosaic of the city laid down 1,000 years ago, and it's obviously has to be updated. But it tells you how stable the city has been, right? That those streets are basically mapped out 1,000 years ago and haven't really changed in that time.
Yeah, so before that, there's the really cute mention of Denny flirting with one of the guardsmen, and then Birgitte being like, they shouldn't be flirting on duty. And it's like sweet but sad all at once, because it's like you want to find joy in the apocalypse, but also like that could cost lives if you're distracted when you're doing bodyguard stuff, and like that's a problem and a thing that will always exist in human conflict. And it's a little vignette of a story because we don't really see anything come of it, but it doesn't matter. This is one of those things where the payoff is that it's happening. We don't need it to come to anything. The fact is that this woman who has not found love yet is suddenly finding love in the middle of the apocalypse. And like that is in and of itself its own story vignette. And that's great. But yes, then we go into the map room, which is so cool. Like a mosaic accurate map in the floor. Like that is the coolest, and they update it so that way it actually like stays up to date over time. Like yes, it's a super stable kingdom, but also like that is the closest thing to like a GIS that you're gonna get in this medieval world where the one power is not being properly utilized for so many different things. Like this is such high grade geographic technology to have this. It's really, really cool. And I can totally see why Birgitte was like, mine. This is my strategic hub. This is Central Command.
This will help me know how to stage people, know what the flow of traffic's going to be, know where people are. I mean, yeah, it's maps are incredible when you're doing the kind of work that Brigitte is doing, which is defending a city from attack. Yeah,
the knowledge of the geography, knowledge of where things are, this is foundational to waging successive war. Like the history of geography is deeply wound into the development of warfare. Very weird thing I learned when studying geography, but like deeply, deeply wound together. And you are made, or your victories are mostly made by information. It's less about your actual strength or even your strategy as much as the information you have with which to build that strategy.
But also how you can reference that information. Having the information in a folder on the shelf isn't going to be very helpful.
Absolutely.
Having it laid out on a map on the floor or the troop movements, having a list of GPS coordinates, not that helpful unless you have them on a map, right? Like,
Yep.
presentation is also very important, and that's where the map room really comes into play, is they're getting these reports of where troops are, and they've got them laid out on the map.
Yeah, they have a way of displaying that data that is easy to reference, easy to understand, easy to update. Like that is profound military technology, even though it's just essentially playing chess on the floor.
And of course, they're worried now that, like, with the shifting of corridors, maybe there's also shifting of streets. Maybe the city isn't even the same.
Yeah, they have to try to figure out how to check that and see if it's a hazard or not, because bad information will kill people faster than no information. If you run down a blind alley that you didn't know was there, you are going to have a very ineffective response to a gate being overrun.
And they're also, like, they're not guarding the whole wall. They are just responding to attacks. So they are jumping out with gateways. So it's really, it's a whole central command that's responding in time. It's a completely different kind of warfare. And I feel like he is writing this, I feel like tanks and helicopters, especially because he was on a helicopter, right? This idea that you can be at a central location with scouts, and then when there's an attack, you respond to it in time by getting on a helicopter and flying out and shooting the place up, right? Like, that's something he did. And so I can imagine that connection of, like, oh yeah, you have these central group of channelers and a small army, and they can defend a much larger wall. So you've got 5 clerks who are working away. They're Master Noris, and then a bunch of pages that are Mistress Harfors. I love the way their relationship has evolved over time. I love that they've gone from 2 relatively small players to owning half of the spy network each and working together to make that happen. And the way they're kind of like the Department of Interior and the Department of Exterior, right? Like the way they work together in this like CIA, FBI type way.
Yeah, and there's just enough antagonism to make a good dynamo, but like they work well together. Yep. It's not a destructive competitiveness; it's a constructive competitiveness.
Yeah, because she's all about the spies and he's all about the just like reports and external like.
She's human resources and he's infrastructure.
Oh, nice.
And they give me really strong, like Downton Abbey vibes, you know?
Totally.
The butler and the mistress of the house, right? Like it's them. Like it's that dynamic. It's great.
We find out, I didn't realize the Black Tower was only 2 leagues from Camelin.
Yeah, it's really close to Camelin.
That's not really far. Close. Isn't a league like, what, 3-point-something miles?
Yeah, something like that.
So that's like six miles away? That's like a short walk.
Yeah, that's an easy ride back and forth. Like a ride and an inspection and a ride back. Like it's right there. It's right there.
That's like within any major modern city's borders.
Yeah, it's very close.
It's like the suburbs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize how big that's going to be a huge, like, change for Camelin in the future when the Black Tower is just as powerful as the White Tower. Because the White Tower is in the middle of nowhere. There's no big cities nearby except, Tarvalin that is the, is Camelin going to be the city of the Black Tower? Is that going to be the place where... So you have Tarvalin and Camelin.
That doesn't seem right. Right? Like, Tarvalin grew up around Tarvalin. Right? Like, right. It seems weird that Camelin would bend itself to catering to the male channeler rebel school. I mean, not rebel school, but it's they're kind of renegades at the beginning of their founding, and Camelin's been there forever, as we've been pointing out, a very stable city. Like, it doesn't feel like the right pairing,
Mm-hmm. So now, I feel like we're gonna get one of these like. Kansas City situations where you've got Kansas City, Kansas and Kansas City, Louisiana, where there's like a border and they both grow outward from that border.
Yeah. That's not ideal, shall we say?
So we sort of get a breakdown now that we're in the map room. I feel like it's a strategic breakdown of what's going on in the city. You've got the camps all around, the 8 Aramilla camps.
We update that the Aiel have left. We look at the fact that the Borderlanders are there. Like, it's a panning shot of the map to remind us of everything.
They're checking in with the rest of Rand's allies, Davram Bashir and Saldeans and the Legion of the Dragon, right? They've been camped around this area. Are they pulling out? Because the Aiel are leaving. So is it everybody? Is it just the Aiel? Like, they need to check and see what's going on.
Yeah, and Brigitte's like, oh, so it looks like Rand must be gearing up to punch the Shan Chan in the face again if he's, pulling even some of the allies.
Which is basically what he's doing, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, because he's going to either make peace with the Shan Chan or defeat them properly, which feels silly. He's tried to defeat them properly multiple times and failed. But, whatever lets him sleep at night.
I don't think he's sleeping much at night.
Extremely fair. That's why he makes such bad decisions. She thinks about how the Borderlanders have really not worked out strategically like she wanted them to. They have made haste slowly across Andor and now are nowhere near where she was hoping that they would be.
And just people aren't reacting to them the way she hoped they would be. They hope they'd be like, oh, the Borderlanders are here. Quick, unite behind the person who has Caemlyn. And that's not what's happening at all. They're like, unite behind our own candidate. And she's like, fuck, not what I was going for.
Yeah, which I kind of appreciate because it would be annoying if everything she did worked out the way she said it was going to. That would be a bit too easy, right? So for her to do this brilliant political maneuver, wow, and then have it be a complete, wet fart of a success is, that feels real in a way that I'm like, thank you for bringing some realism to my fantasy. This is realism I do need, is that the best laid plans of mice and men are just,
I just wish it didn't fail by nothing happening.
Sure,
right?
sure.
Come on, that's fail in a little more exciting ways. Have some people die. Let's go take on the Black Aja, right? Come on.
Don't
let's
worry,
go.
she'll get to that.
Oh, okay, good. I forgot. Yeah, that's right.
She'll fuck up flamboyantly too. And so then we think about all the names, blah, 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 and then Dylan comes in, and immediately, because she is very much like Birgitte, she doesn't fuck around with wondering if her wits are wandering. She walks in and says, something is wrong with the palace.
Mm-hmm.
I know right now that this is not me. This is something wrong with the palace. Explain why I got lost, because it's not dementia. I know that. And I love that she and Birgitte both are like, no, it's not my head. This is an architecture problem.
There's a reason why Dylan would immediately be queen if she declared.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Everybody respects her. She's a smart, intelligent person. I sometimes wonder why she follows Elaine.
Because she believes in the unbroken chain of two queens from one house going in a row. I don't like Dylan's reasoning. It's just the belief in there being some kind of divine right of queens, basically. And it's like, well, you're the correct person according to the rules. And I just am like, you're more experienced at all of this. You have more emotional maturity. You are the better, more unifying candidate. Ah!
I think it really is just Dylan being like, no, I'm good. I've seen what happens to queens. I'm good. Let's put that on Elaine. No, we need the daughter of the previous. Yep, she would. I've seen her. I've grown up around her. She would be a far better. I'm better queen than me. Totally. Yeah, totally. Go get her. I'm not going to do the job. Who wants to be management?
And I think that's super valid. That's valid. Okay, sure. I wish more people were like that, right? It would be nice if more people with the ability to take power were realistic about having enough. The concept of enough just really doesn't apply to people with power. They just don't understand, or richness, being wealthy. They just don't understand what the concept of enough is. And Dylan is demonstrating the concept of enough. And being like, no, you want that? I'm good. I'm fine. I have plenty.
I also think it's a little bit about responsibility versus privilege, right? She has all the privilege she needs. She doesn't need any more privilege. Why would she want more responsibility?
For the good of the people. Which, questionable. Do you need a monarchy to have a well-functioning society?
I also think she doesn't want to have to kill Elaine, which she would have to do if she was queen.
Well, I mean, she could tell Elaine to abdicate permanently. That's an option.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, it's...
Do you think Elaine would do that?
Yeah, at some point Elaine does, look to Dylan and say, do you want to be queen? Like, just tell me right now. Like, I'm so done. I'm so done. And Dylan's like, genuinely, no. Genuinely, you should be queen. That conversation does happen, and I do genuinely believe that, like, in that moment, Elaine is so self-doubting that, like, if Dylan said she would, like, Elaine would have signed those papers. Like, all right, fuck it, I'm out. Like, I'm doing what's good for Andor. Like, she believes that. But Dylan doesn't want it. Dylan is like, I have enough gray hair already. I don't need to age as quickly as this happens to queens. Because Dylan's not a channeler. She doesn't have slowing to keep the stress from prematurely aging her.
God, that's why, the only person who could outlive Queen Elizabeth II is Queen Elaine, because she can channel, right?
Yeah, that's true.
We see Elaine slicing through another listening weave of Sidar, right?
Wiretaps
puts
everywhere.
Up another ward. Yeah, so again, I think it's the same person.
Definitely. Just constantly trying to hack Elaine's phone. So this is, again, where the second time in as many hours where a person that Elaine looks up to her, and she's like, this is unsettling.
Right. And she basically says, yeah, we are aware, but there's nothing we can do about it, right? We can't, the pattern is changing corridors.
Yeah, and Elaine thinks that that's such a weak thing to say, to just be like, we're aware of the problem, but Dylan's like, yeah, that's what I needed to hear. There's nothing to be done, but I need to know that the most powerful people in the room are on the same page as me, even if that page is utter confusion. And then the kids walk in, all the kid high seats roll up in and do their various personality quirks. We see that Catelyn got rather infatuated with Aviendha, because who doesn't? I mean, we're all infatuated with Aviendha, so, like, we can't judge.
Show me how to use the spear, Aviendha.
Yeah, I mean, I think a bit of a, like, girl crush hero worship combo might have been going on there. But yeah, she's really, like, whiny about, like, where's Aviendha? Where's Aviendha? And Elaine does not enjoy that. But, it's a fun way to distinguish the girl from the boys in this group. And then each of the boys has their little thing, either drinking goat's milk, having their voice crack, drinking wine. Like, they each do their thing to attempt to distinguish them.
I couldn't focus on that paragraph. My eyes just glazed right over. I tried. I really tried.
Yeah, there's not much going on there. Dylan and Birgitte bicker a little bit. And yeah, so Dylan reports on the what she was doing over the past few days, which was trying to convince the people sitting off to the side to swear to Elaine, and they won't. And so then Catelyn and the littlest of the kids are both, like, kind of reiterating what we're hearing. It's a meeting. We're all talking through the plot again, and it's like, okay, so we're evenly split into thirds. Like,
that's what I take from it, right? 6, 6, and 6. There's 6 houses for her, 6 houses for Aramilla, and 6 houses that are uncommitted. And until that changes, we are split, right? And basically, doesn't she get, like, all 6 of them at once, or, like, she gets 5 out of the 6?
Something like that, yeah.
They're uncommitted, yeah. And that turns the tables for her, I think.
Yeah, it gets her. She eventually manages it through a couple of big step ups in that. But yeah, for now they're at a balance, and it reminds me of the White Tower, really. How the White Tower is roughly split into thirds.
Right, because you got the rebels, the loyalists, and the sisters who keep ending up at the Silver Sister.
The Silver Swan, yes.
Silver Swan, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's again, there's just this uneasy balance where nobody can win, but as soon as someone moves, the game is afoot, so everyone's trying to hold as still as possible. And Dylan was unable to move the needle at that meeting.
There's the Black Swan Tower, Aes Sedai Towers, there's the Silver Swan, and then there's Swan Sanche. Those are the 3 groups.
So true. True. Yeah, we talk a little bit about, how, these people must be crazy not to be joining us. And Dylan says, no, they're not fools. They're just men and women who think they see the future better than they do. Which I think is, always important to remember in these kinds of multi-sided tangles, is that Probably nobody is entirely blameless and nobody is entirely maliciously hell-bent on ruining everyone else's life. Probably everyone is a mix of trying to do the right thing and fucking up along the way. If it's this multifaceted,
Yeah, but there's also people who are out to gain for themselves, right, at any cost. And I feel like that's as close to evil as we come, is like, no, I want for myself, and I don't care what the consequences are to the people around me. And that's like Aramilla.
Yeah. Well, in this case, we're talking about the ones who are sitting to the side. Like, it's like, well, why are they're such fools not to join us? This is ridiculous. And Dylan's like, they're not fools. They're just doing what they think is best for them to navigate this messiness. And, yeah, it's like there are people who are maliciously hellbent on ruining everything, but there's a lot of people who aren't, but are still effectively reaching the same end. And, like, being able to distinguish that is, I think, an important part of nuance and discourse. Who is the Aramilla and who is the Elorian? Like, these are different people having different reasons to achieve the same decision, and it's worth understanding the difference.
Because meanwhile, Aramilla is like not signing peace treaties with the Borderlanders just to keep the threat alive, so to keep her chance at the throne alive, right? Like, she's putting the safety of Andor behind her ambition and threatening the safety. Now, that you could argue that Elaine did the same thing by negotiating the path of the Borderlander army into Camelin, or into Andor, but she also made a treaty ahead of time that there would be no violence from her. So she's kind of making it look like she's gambling without actually having any cards on the table.
She's taking a calculated and thoughtful risk rather than just blatantly disregarding common sense. Even though, yes, it all might blow up either way.
And then we get a very sort of romantic passage about Avienda.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, she often found herself staring at a page without seeing a word, thinking of her sister, or starting to say something to Avienda before remembering that she was not there. She felt very lonely, which was ridiculous.
Yeah, it is very romantic. It's like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm with all these people, but none of them are Avienda.
People
Certainly
everywhere,
platonic
but not
love.
a sister to sleep with.
Yeah. All right, Jordan, keep calling them sisters. I'm sure that'll convince somebody. Yeah.
And then Van Deen comes in, Kirstiana and Zarya, and Elaine thinks that's going to be a relief. It's a nice break from her thoughts. Van Deen, breaks her sort of like stimming on holding on to the power as strongly as she can. She's just sitting there like powered up really, really high.
Why do you think she's hanging on to it so hard?
Because she feels lonely, and the power makes you feel good. She feels really, really bad. It's the drug thing. It's
comforting herself. Yeah.
It's comfort. It's self-soothing.
I kind of love Van Deen striding in, because this woman has been wasting away, so she's just like this skeleton, tall dress, very commanding, no nonsense. I imagine her just slamming doors open everywhere as she goes.
Yeah, very like uncharacteristically Cad Swain-like.
Yeah. But also like
naive,
a little terrifying.
Yeah, because she just discovered that not only did one of their number just get murdered, she's retroactively discovering that like 5 more of them have been murdered. Like this is a moment for upset. Because yeah, she comes in to renounce that Rhiannon Corley is dead, and this is upsetting. This is sad. Because she was the leader of the knitting circle. She was going to go beat Green Aja. She's been a really like positive leadership character, making the kin, she's one of the faces of the kin. It's a bummer that she got just smothered with the power.
And then, they make it obvious that like, oh yeah, this person's trying to show us that the power is being used to kill because we missed all the signs before, and we're really bad at our jobs, is basically what it's saying to me, right? Because
it's when the DM has to completely like shoehorn and railroad your characters back onto the plot because you completely missed the like blinking neon sign that like set up the story hook to like do the campaign. Yeah, it's that. It's like, oh my god, I thought you guys were clever, but I guess not. Okay.
We're looking for a one-armed man. This is the castle of the claw. Yeah, I don't want to go in there. What?
Yeah.
You have been kidnapped by the claw's men and being taken back to his castle. We escape. Okay. You have been magically teleported into the claw's castle. I use anti-teleport. God damn it.
Counterspell. Yeah. All right. So yeah, we discover, how this all happened, and Elaine asks, "Why would a Black Sister be doing this? It seems like it's aimed at me to help Aramilla win," which again is why I'm like, are we sure there's no Aes Sedai involved with Aramilla? Why is this happening if it's not? Because it looks like it's to help Aramilla, like.
Well, I think it's more to undercut Elaine. It doesn't really... Yes, it happens to help Aramilla, right? But, I think this is just...
Lord of Chaos, get rid of the good leaders kind of stuff.
Yeah, Serene, get rid of people. Keep the kingdom divided. It looks like Elaine's going to win, so how do you prevent that as a dark friend? You start taking away some of her allies. First, you start with the kin. You kill a couple of them to frighten them off. Only it doesn't work. So you kill a couple of more. It still doesn't work. So then you just start, stabbing them in the street. Being like, yes, you're going to get murdered if you stay here. Put a big sign on them, That's where she's at this point. And instead of, finding a new tactic, she just keeps doubling down and killing more and more and more until you're like, do you get it now?
Man, when the serial killer gets frustrated with the cops and starts making it easier for them, oof. You're bad at your job when.
I can just imagine the meeting where she gets pulled in and the Forsaken's like, so why haven't the kinswoman fled yet? That's your job. And she's like, I keep killing them. They keep thinking it's an accident. I don't I guess I'm just going to murder them all one by one until I get through them all. Is that okay? Is that good enough?
Really annoyed in middle management HR meeting. Why are you not achieving your objectives? Are you doing the things we told you to do? Yes, I'm literally doing the things you told me to do. They just aren't smart enough.
I put up the signs. I don't think they read them. I don't know.
Yeah. Then she also says the sea folk are probably not in any danger, but let's make sure that they get all these memos and warnings that we're giving to the kin, just on the off chance that they decide that they could be targeted, even though they probably won't be.
I think that's a good idea. I wouldn't leave them out to hang to dry.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I would not be so sure that they are safe, because the Dark One might actually give a fuck about the sea folk, unlike the rest of us.
Yeah, well, what happens when the Windfinders are gone? Then the sea folk become important, right? If they're going to target your allies, they're starting with Windfinders, but why not the sea folk, right? The kin. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And that's the end of the Elaine POV, but not the end of the chapter. We get to switch to Aramilla, who we love to hate. She sucks. She sucks so much, but we don't get to be in her head very much, so this is fun.
This is fun, because like I was saying earlier, this feels very Game of Thrones to me. You've got the senile leader who's being propped up on a throne. You've got troops being thrown away flagrantly by a leader who doesn't care about their lives. There's some weird eating grossness going on around the old man. It's very Game of Thrones to me. And
the lecherousness, again, coming from the old man. We've got threats of, giving children to torturers to get information or to get allegiances out of them. There's it's very grim dark. Just the whole tone feels different. Everything feels cold and stinky, and everyone at the table is unhappy. It's just a very different vibe. Very different vibe.
It feels like you're hanging out with Elaine and everything's again, Camelot and magic, and everything will turn out in the end, and then you come over here and it's muddy and dirty and everybody's got sick and diseased and there's no hope and nobody wants anything, and Aramilla has this just crazy delusions that somehow other people are following, and you're just you ever work for that company where you're how did this guy found a company and make it successful? How is this the guy in charge? There's so many more intelligent people around here who could be doing the thing.
Yeah.
And it's always a guy.
Yeah, and like this woman who happens to have ovaries instead of, balls, but like whatever. Like she is so mean to the staff specifically. She's like, this meal is bad. I need to flog the chef and then fire him because obviously he would be a terrible chef after I flog him for having subpar ingredients. And it's just like, you're the worst.
Is true.
Well, sure.
Let me tell you something. Yeah, if someone ever flogged me, they would not ever get a good meal out of me again.
Absolutely. But just like the how you treat all your staff like this is awful.
And especially because we know the reason the food is turning has nothing to do with the food preparation or storage. It has everything to do with the Dark One and the last battle coming.
It's a sign of the last battle, not a sign that you have bad staff.
And the fact we see a lot of leaders who refuse to admit the last battle is coming be the bad leaders. Remember the White Cloak who was like really pissed off that the metal turns to liquid?
No, that's Elenia's husband. He's a Andoran. But
that's right.
Yes,
that
right. Guy's
Yeah.
denial of the reality of Tarmangaiden happening is, his troops drift away to make their own way. That he's not a leader anymore at all. Yeah.
I underlined, you can never trust a cook after you've been punished. It's just so true.
You just shouldn't punish cooks because they're working really hard.
And they make your food.
You know what food can do? It
Right?
can kill you.
It goes in you. Yeah, it goes in you.
This is the one person you like that, and like the barber, right? Like those are because they got all the sharp shit like next to your sensory organs and could just kill you. Like just don't piss off people who have the ability to like literally get inside you.
Yeah, or accidentally cut your face open and scar you for life.
Don't do that.
Right? Don't do that.
So we've got some grumbling about the current strategy. She's not a good leader, right? Everyone's doubting her strategy and being like, we should do this and that.
And they can see Elaine recruiting more people through the gateways. Like, why are you besieging a city when they have the walls and they just keep getting more and more people every day? The siege doesn't do shit when they have gateways, right? Like, let's attack now.
And Aramilla doesn't believe that the gateways are a factor. And, she has this line, they might at least show her the respect due a woman who is soon to be the Queen of Andor, rather than disagreeing with her all the time. Like, respect and facts are not in the same space. Like, disagreeing with you about the facts of the matter is not a matter of respect. That's just what it is. But, she's so up her own ass about how power is supposed to work. This is proving why she's a bad leader. She thinks that respect means agreeing with her all the time, being surrounded by yes people.
This is on the level of respect me because my husband has a rank, or respect me because my parents
who my dad
are important
is?
people. Right. Yep, that's very much her vibe.
Yeah. And then she also has this lovely humanitarian-oriented line. What else are mercenaries good for if not dying in place of our armsmen? Which, yes, professionally speaking, that is what they do. But, you don't have to be a dick about it. It's like, you still shouldn't waste their lives on a stupid losing strategy.
No. And in a lot of cases, they are there just to provide numbers, right? They're there to rattle their sabers and prevent more. It's like, oh no, I have enough troops you don't want to attack. I wonder how many times people hire mercenaries to just man walls or line, I would imagine a mercenary's job often does not involve killing people.
The best offense is a good defense kind of thing. Like, just look scary, and the scarier you look, the less likely you'll have to actually follow up all those threats that you were making.
Because realistically, if we know anything about professional fighters, is you don't become a professional fighter by killing each other a lot.
No. Yeah.
You have to be able to go to many engagements and come out the other side with pay, and then continue to have a career.
Right, yeah. You can't all die in every engagement. That sort of kills the industry.
Yeah, or half of you die in every... that's why they don't shoot when the people are running away with crossbows. That's why they don't kill the mercenaries running away. It's a code of just no, we're all here to live and fight another day. We see the difference. They're trying to do a parallel between how does Amathera react to mercenaries pushing back versus... Elaine is like, no, I'm not going to pay you anymore. And Elaine is like, no, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, Aramilla doesn't care about any code of conduct, any value of human life. Elaine is like, I have contractual specific obligations to you and I will not go a step further. Those are very, very different approaches to leadership. One is holding a line, the other is being just on your own team, like with no care for other people. It's not wrong to use mercenaries. They signed up for it. It's totally fine to employ them, but like, you got to employ them justly and with a respect for their craft, which Elaine is struggling with the whole crossbow thing. You know, she's struggling with understanding how to respect the craft, but Aramilla wouldn't even bother trying. So.
And then we get this sort of, you know, senile Nason laughing, spraying goblets of half-chewed stew across the table. Yeah, ugh.
It's that scene
right.
from Return of the King, you know?
To.
It's just, ugh.
Yeah. The tomatoes.
Oh, why? Why is he drop all the tomato juice down his chin? I
love that actor,
it's so gross.
It's
so good.
And just like, and nobody's like dethroned this guy. He's still the one in charge. But that's why Aramilla is left to be in control, because this old guy is senile and can't make decisions anymore. And so maybe he once was a good leader, but now Aramilla is the one in charge.
Yeah, for some reason he thinks that she's like one of his daughters, but they aren't even of the same house. Like, but yeah, his house is sworn to her, and everyone's just waiting for him to die so that way Sylvaise, the vapid cowgirl, can just, you know, step into her role. And no one expects anything of her. We get it emphasized so often that there's just these little hints of sharpness, and then it goes back behind a mask, and it's like, the second that this old guy dies, she takes very firm control of her house and is a good ally to Elaine and all this stuff.
Right. Because she sees what Aramilla is doing.
Oh, she's taking such copious notes. She is just poker facing my way through this so I don't die. And the second I'm out, I am out. But she knows how to survive. Sylvaise is a survivor who has put up with a lot of shit already, and Aramilla is easier to survive than her own family. So that's what she's doing right now.
Is there anything interesting about this Scrivener, the Hernville Jacob?
Master Hernville? There's one thing that's interesting about him, is that he's one of those people that Sebin Balwer could find as being more than he is, because he's getting paid way more than he should be. She's like, ha ha ha, I assure his loyalty as my spy master by having him get paid so much. And Balwer has told us already, like, I have found a lot of people who are more than they seem by looking at payrolls and seeing people who are getting paid not what they should be paid. Because Perrin's like, I want to pay you more. And Balwer's like, please don't, because that blows my cover.
That's a good point.
And like right here, we're seeing an example of like, if he wanted to look in Aramilla's camp for who to blackmail, who to steal information from, this guy's got a big red arrow pointed right at him. That's the only thing I've got that's interesting about him. But I do think it's fun that RJ made sure to put an example of that in place to pair with Balwer's comment to Perrin. But what he's doing is just acting as a courier from the banks, I think, to just bring a message. And I believe it's the banks. I believe Mistress Andscale is a banker that Elaine talked with at some point. But I might be wrong about that.
Right. But what's the money for?
Financing the war, buying more mercenaries.
I think it's also to try and get the mercenaries to turn on Elaine. She's trying to bribe the mercenaries. Yeah. She's trying to get them to turn coat, basically.
I think you're right. I think it's not the general run-of-the-mill war effort. It's if we bribe enough gate guards, we can get through.
Mm-hmm. And we do see that offensive,
yes.
Right? That's the whole attack that happens while Elaine's already out of the city because she's been kidnapped by the Black Ajah.
So.
Right? That's when everything... Because, she comes back to the fight having happened, right? And,
right.
She basically comes back victorious from being kidnapped by the Black Ajah.
She really turns that situation around.
Yeah, really failing up. Again, that's her real low point. Like, we're getting there. We're falling. We're getting lower and lower. But it's this whole... She has no allies. She gets kidnapped by the Black Ajah. Her allies get killed. And then she gets rescued. And while she's gone... the attack on the city happened and was defeated.
But yeah, that's all I have left for the chapter.
Yeah, I'd say just the readout and tell them a week from tomorrow to the day, right? The Camelin will be hers. That's when the betrayal will happen.
Yeah, we're getting an escalating, ratcheting up tension on the timeline. Like, okay, Elaine's succession plot is wrapping up quickly in terms of in-world time. We don't know how many chapters it will take, from a first-time reader perspective, but we know that in-world it's happening soon.
So it could be, it's at least within the next book.
Right, yeah. Yeah. Her lips compressed of their own accord. The whole amount. She had hoped to get off with paying only the first half. After all, who had dared dun her once she was queen? Draw up a letter to Mistress Anscale. I'll sign and seal it first thing in the morning. Transferring that much gold would require days. And how long to have the armsmen ready? She had never really paid attention to that sort of thing. Lear could tell her, but she hated showing weakness. Tell them, a week from tomorrow, to the day. That should be enough. In a week, Camelin would be hers. The throne would be hers. Aramilla, by the grace of the light, Queen of Andor, defender of the realm, protector of the people, high seat of House Marn. Smiling, she went back inside to tell the others.
And then starting next week is just the avalanche at the end of this book. I mean, every chapter from here on out for me is like top tier chapter. Loyal's mother and Rand in his head. Then we get Death Gates. Then we get Nynaeve taking land to the Borderlands, which is great. We get Egwene in the tower, which I love. There's Rand losing his hand, Perrin's attack on Malden. I mean, these are just chapter after chapter after chapter of just, Elaine getting kidnapped and coming back and winning, Matt marrying Tuon, Matt killing a bunch of Shan-Chan, right? These are just like so many things happen that it's just like hit after hit after hit. And they're like there's a couple of chapters of like transition, but they're good chapters anyway. So there's very few combos we're doing from here on out because it's just a solid, very exciting end of this book. So many plot lines get crushed into oblivion at the end of this book with very satisfying endings.
Yeah, no, the part where Knife of Dreams is a book of payoff, where we're about, starting next week, we hit payoff. Like, that's when the fireworks start going off.
Yeah.
And it's just boom, boom, boom. All these things we've been promised,
boom,
all
boom,
these
boom.
things we've been anticipating, just one after another, after another, after another.
Not just from this book, but for all the books,
It's going to be good. It's going to be so satisfying. Episode 500 is coming up. I'm so excited. We're about to really hit some super thrilling chapters.
Yeah, and just super thrilling. Like, this is stuff we've been talking about for so long, and I don't know. I'm very excited. I'm very excited. Anything lifestyle stuff we want to put on?
Yeah, I had family up over the weekend to do my first ever Passover Seder. Never done that before, so figured I should collect the traditions from my grandparents while they're still around, because grandparents, the being 80-something situation. So that was very cool and weird. It was very cool and very weird. It was like staring at the sun. Like, it's just, I was dying of cringe, but also I'm the one that asked for it, so I was not allowed to die of cringe.
So what about that makes it cringe? It's just that it's unfamiliar traditions that you're not used to, or that it's in a different space or done by different people? Like, what's going on there?
There's just no sense of having those traditions that exist before, and it all just feels kind of hokey and
Got it.
prescriptive, and like, what in the like sincere 1980s is happening right now? And there's parts of it were very like, it's just, there's this weird self-deprecating turning away-ness that is several generations old in that branch of my family.
Okay.
The coming over from Imperial Russia and assimilating into America. Like, there is a multi-generational awkward turning away from the Jewishness that, like, makes it really weird to try to turn towards it. So, you know, it's like walking up to a tattoo or bungee jumping or something. Like, yes, I asked for this, but also I don't want to do it anymore now that I'm at the edge. Like, never mind. Never mind. But, you know, I had out of town family, so we powered through, and it was cool. I definitely think that there's a lot of things I want to change because it is a living tradition by virtue of being, you know, a family thing. But also, this was the download year. This was the year where I was like, just tell me what you've got. And there was so much weird miscommunication about what we were doing and which ingredients we were going to have and, like, timing. And it was just an absolute fucking circus in some regards. But it was great. You know, my grandparents were very supportive of the whole thing. And Brandon, of course, did the bulk of the work on the cooking front.
Yep.
You know, he just had to go feet first. You know, he knew less than I did. I'm trying to communicate to him what I'm getting from my grandma, and I'm not asking good questions, and I'm not getting good answers. And Brandon just, you know, pulled through and did all kinds of cool cooking and stuff. And I am still cleaning the kitchen because that's a lot of dishes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was cool.
What kind of meals? What kind of food did you make?
We did matzo ball soup from homemade chicken stock. And then we also did a roast chicken because we didn't have any lamb in our freezer, which would have been the more appropriate meat. But my grandma was like, we can do chicken. So it was a chicken overload. And you're supposed to have horseradish as part of the ritual plate, as well as, like, just the food. And so Brandon made horseradish, like, bought the radish in its root form and, like, made horseradish. And it was so good. Oh my God, it was so good.
Where'd you get the horse to mix with the radish?
Well, those horses that come by and graze on our field, we just took one of them.
Just one of them? Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
What happens if it's a zebra? Then you call it razor radish?
Ooh, that's good. Yeah. Cuts like a razor right through your nose. It's so good, though. So, yeah, we had matzo ball soup that we made, and we made borscht. Which we'd never had before. And my dad is vegan and has perfected a cashew nut, like cream, like sour cream kind of thing.
Okay.
And so he brought that so that he could have, you know, the vegan borscht and put that in it. And he left it for us to eat. And it's so good. It's so good. So we have a bunch of really good food. And then some very weird food, like the matzah. Brandon didn't have the energy to make matzah. He was doing so many other things. So we had store-bought matzah, and it was like the most stale, boring nonsense. And I'm like, you have to make it next year. Like, this is a simple cracker, but it doesn't have to be so fucking stale. Like, this is ridiculous. Because, like, our sense of keeping kosher was we just didn't do leavened bread. Like, that was the degree of kosher that we were keeping. It's like, we're going to not make literally fermented bread. That's, you know, the extent of that. And, like, coconut macaroons, like, they should be good, but they're not.
Okay. Fair enough.
But, like, you know, again, it was just like, I've never done this. I don't know what matters. I don't know what doesn't matter. I don't know what I want to change, how I want to change it. Like, I just am downloading this year. So I am relieved that it is over because that was a lot of buildup. But it was fine. It was fun and it was fine. And I definitely want to make it part of my, like, annual experience. Because it's a cool little holiday where you're connecting, like, food and flavor to an oral tradition. And, like, however fanciful the historic roots of that oral tradition are, is sort of beside the point. The tradition of tying these foods to telling that story is very, very old. And is part of being in the diaspora. And, like, it's cool. It's a much bigger, more important holiday than Hanukkah, which is the only other holiday I've ever had a connection to. And that one goes back to my childhood, but, like, it's way less
but the Christians
important.
made that one really important.
That one is a very specifically American Jewish experience. Yeah. It's really tied to assimilating into, the Christian world. And Passover is genuinely a global holiday that, like, has mattered to Jews forever. So, definitely was a weird year to decide I wanted to get into my Jewish heritage a little more. Definitely has the whole ongoing genocide in Gaza has definitely been a weird backdrop to be trying to, like, find interesting history to learn and understand what the Seder was going to be and like putting it all together. Like, definitely weird. Weird year to have picked that. Completely unrelated. Like, they're totally unrelated events. They just happen to be happening at the same time. This was an inevitable process in my arc, but very odd year to be like discovering that. So of course, we had to talk about it a little bit, and it was cool. It was good. So I guess that's my update. Tapping into my quarter Jewishness and being like, well, this is a thing I'd like to incorporate somehow into my life. It's a cultural thing, because I mean, food holidays are good.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, that the principle of a food holiday is I'm all in. So
it's just generally what we celebrate with that food holiday, like with Thanksgiving, just doesn't really resonate with me. Or on Christmas.
Yeah.
Celebrating the Columbus coming over, that wasn't, the more I learn about that, the more I'm like, maybe I don't want to.
It's real awkward.
and obviously I don't celebrate Christmas I'm not Christian, right? So
right, yeah.
I have to celebrate it in a very secular way. So I do find that very difficult. But I still want to have holidays, right? Like,
yeah, you want to have events throughout the year to look forward to with specific foods,
right,
and reasons to make travel plans, and like things to do as a family that like form memories. Like, that is a human thing. We want that.
And you can pick things like anniversaries and birthdays, but those, because they are specific to you and your family, don't necessarily mean you get a week off from work. While everybody else is also taking a week off from work, right? So there's reasons why, it's very easy to fall into, okay, well, we're going to celebrate whatever holiday happens to fall around Christmas.
Right, and just recast it in our own image, in our own home. And,
yes.
But take advantage of everyone being forced to take vacation days together. Yeah, absolutely. It's just how it works. But yeah. Agreed. I'm casting about for holidays that I can feel better about.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?